Chiefs Kingdom, welcome in to the AP Breakdown, a Super Bowl edition, another Super Bowl edition of the AP Breakdown. Super Bowl 59 here, talking Chiefs, Eagles, biggest game of the year. It all comes down to this. Fired up for it. I'm Ron Kopp Jr. at Ron_Kopp on Twitter, lead analyst at arrowheadpride.com. With me, as always, Caleb James at CJ Scoobs on Twitter. Caleb, we are here. The last game of the Chiefs season. We've looked at them all. We got all these thoughts and notes in our head. What are your final or first thoughts, I guess, going into this final game of the year?
Well, I mean, last week we obviously talked a lot about beating the Bills, but it is finally starting to sink in now that the Chiefs are playing in their fifth Super Bowl of the Mahomes era, going for their fourth win, which would, if they could win, would put them at 5 all time, tying them for second all time in the NFL. They would be up there with the likes of some of the great teams there's ever been. But this is a special one. This is something that no team has ever done before, and I don't think it's still even being talked about enough. This week, all you've seen from media and social media, all this stuff is just, you see foolishness about people asking the Chiefs point blank to their faces about refereeing. You know, Mahomes and Kelsey are getting harassed by members of the media. You've got Adam Schefter out here leaning into this kind of stuff, as Travis Kelsey would say, kind of going along with it because it's what people think they want to see. And in reality, what the Chiefs have done is nothing short of miraculous. This is one of the greatest runs, not just in football history, but professional sports. If you know anything about the game, the longevity of football is not that long. These kind of runs, they come and go. You know, you look at some of these great teams they have, very few great teams ever become dynasties, and very few dynasties ever have a chance to go for 3 straight championships. But that's exactly what the Chiefs are going to attempt to do this weekend.
I know, no, as someone that, grew up watching NFL films, the NFL Network, those America's Game, documentaries, all that, you knew that the 60s were the Packers, the 70s were the Steelers, the 80s were the Niners, the 90s were the Cowboys, the thousands were the, Patriots were really the last 2 decades, it felt like. But, last year kind of cemented as the Chiefs as a 20s team. There's no doubt about that. But yes, if they win this game, it's a mountaintop, and they're on top of it in terms of the all-time dynasties. It's what makes this game so special. It's what makes this game awesome. But yeah, they got another rematch. Last year we got the rematch with the Niners from the first Super Bowl. Now we got a rematch from just 2 years ago. So honestly, it's even more recent, with the teams and everything. So we got the Eagles coming up. We're going to be looking at the Eagles, both sides of the ball, kind of what to know about your opponent on Super Bowl Sunday, maybe some strengths, some weaknesses. But, just right off the bat, I guess, thinking about the last Super Bowl, thinking about that shootout, thinking about 38-35, Caleb, do you think this game is a similar shootout? Do you see this game going similarly? Do you see, major differences in this game? I guess just kind of, what are your thoughts when you kind of compare it to the last matchup in the Super Bowl?
Both rosters are relatively similar. Like, you've exchanged a few guys here or there, but the cores are still the same. The Chiefs on defense, they're a little bit older than they were the last time they played, but that's maybe coming into their advantage.
Yeah.
And offensively, you've got different tackles, but now I feel like the Chiefs tackles are almost more better suited to handle what Philly can do. Philly's D-line is basically a lot different, but it's a lot of the same. It's just like, you take out like Hargraves and you have Fletcher Cox, and now instead of Hassan Reddick, it's Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith around the edge. But the big difference in this year's matchup, and it's very similar to the 49ers having McCaffrey last year, is the fact that the Eagles have acquired Saquon Barkley, who was the best running back in the NFL this season, had one of the greatest seasons in the history of the NFL. And I'm going to pull some clips here because he is on an absolute tear through the NFC playoffs.
Yeah, no, I heard that, and I never fact-checked it, but I trusted the source I saw it from. But, I mean, he is very close. He doesn't need that great of a game to surpass the all-time record for most rushing yards in one season when you combine regular season and postseason. obviously that makes sense when you talk about a 2,000-yard rusher that has 4 playoff games to tack onto it. But, it is the major difference from last, just before you get into it, you just watch that last Super Bowl and then you watch the film from the NFC Championship. You can you notice the offensive scheme and how much Saquon helps them open things up compared to just even that last game they played him. There was a lot of contested catches, a lot of Jalen Hurts just kind of throwing into tight windows, throwing, he's forcing things to his playmakers, but Saquon really opens things up for him even more just because he's such a threat. And every time they, run or pass, drop back or handoff, he's such a threat.
Yeah, and when you also combine just a fantastic offensive line for Philadelphia, I mean, they are the best offensive line in the NFL, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What they do in the run game is really special stuff, and they bullied around these teams from the NFC in the playoffs. I mean, take a look at this. They just got like a little Y counter look here. And, a lot of people said Mekhi Becton was going to be just a bust because he couldn't play guard or tackle. I mean, well, guess what? Dude's pretty good at playing guard, and he is playing some of his best football. Beautiful kick out block. Look at Jordan Mailata, though, the right tackle here. And me as an offensive line guy, Eagles are one of my favorite teams just because I love that they build their squad on both sides from up front first. But this play could have been a touchdown. This late in the game here, they're taking it looks like Dallas Goedert and Mailata are just taking 90 there for a ride. They just create a massive hole. Good lead block. Saquon scores easily, but it's late in the game, so they're just trying to kill clock there.
Well, and another thing about that play too, and it'll be more of a theme on a lot of these plays, I'm sure. But just that you see, I kind of think of the Eagles as like maybe someone that's in a lot of 11 personnel kind of on the surface, but no, they do a lot of 12 personnel stuff, not only to run the ball, but also to set up some of their, kind of traditional pass stuff. They're kind of deep drop back pass stuff. But yeah, they're going to be in 12 personnel. They're going to have Grant Calcaterra on the field along with Dallas Goedert. And, it's going to give opportunities for the Chiefs to have Leo Chenal on the field and kind of have their big bodies, able to defend Saquon if they're going to run out of those looks.
Yep. And look at this. Jalen Hurts, very intelligent quarterback. I have a lot of respect for Jalen Hurts. He's been one of my other favorite guys. Non-Chiefs, obviously, but since he came in at halftime in that game for Alabama, that's kind of when you saw how smart of a dude he is, how big time he is. And I mean, the Eagles went every bit blow for blow with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl here a couple of years ago. But look at this. He's smart. Well, let's check out of this. There's no need to throw into this. The Rams have a really loose, light box. They've got linebackers over the guards. Hey, let's just get Saquon over here because we really like just running zone this way. And you see Becton and Lane Johnson just blowing stuff up, and it's all over. Like this is Saquon has broken the big ones so many times, and it's just like I know the threat of the Eagles pass game just gets to a lot of people. They get in these situations, even if you're 3rd and 9, 3rd and long, they can hurt you with this kind of stuff because he is the kind of back that can do this. There's no excuse to have this loose and light of a box versus Philadelphia with the kind of player he is. And
yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think that's a good point, the light box thing. I think the Chiefs will try to keep their linebackers in these situations to avoid guys like, Justin Reed or someone getting just mauled like Mekhi Becton just mauled that linebacker there, that light linebacker.
Where I think the Chiefs are fine at is they're actually originally the way they're built is they are built to stop the run. Like our base package is a very good run stuffing base package. It may have looked a little bit different the last couple of weeks, like they haven't been as effective, but the main defensive game plan last week was don't let Josh Allen beat you. If it's James Cook running around, then we can handle that. We can stop it eventually, get him into the situation you want to get him in. This week is totally different animal, despite, how talented Hurts is.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I think what you've seen is just their offensive line is a big factor, and I'm curious to see how light the Chiefs do go. If they do go base, even when the Eagles are sometimes in their nickel person or their 11 personnel, I should say. Do the Chiefs stick in base just to have the bodies like Leo Chenal and Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil on the field at the same time to stuff the run lanes and make sure Saquon doesn't go loose like this? Because Saquon's going to get his, right? But you just cannot have these plays that we're showing. You cannot have these busted open, wide open, 70-yard touchdown runs. You just can't happen.
Yeah, and they got the bunch over here to the left. You got Mailata, They bring the motion over with Smith. It's kind of just some eye candy. Give that little pitch, and you see Mailata get out in space, and he's just blowing through dudes there. And that's just special. You got to tackle this week. This is one thing I do like that does give the Chiefs always an advantage when they're going against like an elite running back type is they are a great tackling team. Washington's defense was not ready for this by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they gave up close to 30 against Detroit the week before, and they gave up like a ridiculous amount of yards to Jahmyr Gibbs. So it only makes sense that Saquon was going to go out and feast against them. But I just think with the way the Chiefs are built, they are going to be more equipped to handle this than some of the NFC teams that Philly ran into here.
Yeah, and honestly, when I talk about the Chiefs, matching maybe with base personnel more to have the heavier guys. I mean, you think about it though, Chamari Connor, a guy that plays that nickel that would kind of be that de facto seventh guy in the box seventh guy in the box, in those nickel packages when they do want to defend the run. Like, he's a pretty good matchup for a guy like Saquon, obviously, just because he is a safety that, is physical, but he's also, athletic enough to keep up, open. He's a good open field tackler for the most part. He can be a little sloppy, but I think Connor is a key player here if they do trust a lot of their nickel stuff still in situations where they still can't hand the ball off.
And this week you got to be ready for anything. Super Bowl week, they're gonna run plays we've never seen before. The Chiefs are gonna run plays they've never seen before. Saquon, not the biggest pass catcher, but obviously he can do it. And boy, you get him in that much space, it's going to be bad for anyone. Like, this is just like a simple little check down on like 3rd and 10, and it turns into a 50-yard rip just because they don't have anyone there. And then the next man up just misses the tackle. So that's how fast it can happen versus the Eagles, man. They definitely strive for that explosion. They're built up front from the inside out without question. And they, their entire offense does really feed off of their ability to run the football. This week, you got to be ready for Jalen Hurts' legs also. But I feel like stopping Saquon has to be the number one task for the defense. I don't think the Chiefs have done anything during this run to show us that they're not ready to do that. But it'll be a test unlike they've seen before.
Yeah, I mean, Spags said that in a media availability end of last week. He said Saquon's going to be the toughest challenge we've had all year as a run defense, and that's not necessarily a surprising thing, but it just does, put into perspective that, as good as this Chiefs defense has played against the run, there are a lot of different layers to why Saquon's going to be a whole different level. It's not just his talent; it's also the offensive line. It's also the threat of Jalen Hurts pulling. It's also the play calling. Kellen Moore's a pretty good play caller, but it's also the pass game. It's also the ability for the Eagles to have these two guys on the outside, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who are, truly, one of the best receiver duos in the NFL. A.J. Brown himself is probably one of the best receivers in the NFL. And they also have Dallas Goedert, which we'll get into too. But, it starts first and foremost with, the Eagles want to get the ball over the middle to A.J. Brown. And they love to do these slants, to get that done. Now, I'm going to show some Chiefs clips too from the last Super Bowl to show some similarities, but you're already seeing here that like they're going to use Saquon on way, try to find ways to kind of open up that middle of the field, use him side to side, get the linebackers thinking about him. When you think about how this formation sets up, is it going to be trips to this side? Is it going to be trips to that side? Where's the 3 receiver side? All of a sudden it ends up on this side. Linebackers have to shift that way, focus that way. And then you have a little bit of space over the middle. Obviously, this gets broken up because they play it well, but they're going to try to open it up not only with Saquon. You're going to see it just with guys literally releasing vertically. A guy like Dallas Goedert here releasing vertically, and just all he is doing is pretty much opening up that window for A.J. Brown to hit the slant. That's what you're going to see. And so how the Chiefs can counter that is having that linebacker be hyper aware, right? Right here, Willie Gay is right there, right in front of it. Nowhere to go with it. The linebackers have to be hyper aware and not allow him to get too much space once he does catch it. Because, he's a great, receiver off the ball, getting separation off the line of scrimmage. So you're not going to always have your corners being able to disrupt this slant. He's going to be able to get that initial separation. It's whether or not, they can, hold them to limited yards like you saw on those plays. So that's kind of the main thing for me on A.J. Brown is you're going to see, the slant routes, because they think, especially when Trent McDuffie matches up against him and they do go one-on-one you're going to see that they're going to try to overwhelm McDuffie physically, because that is what A.J. Brown has over him. And that's what Trent McDuffie has struggled with at times this year, right? In his career, is just, overall the physicality of a receiver. But no, in the basis of the Philly pass offense, when they're not running the ball, when they're doing, kind of more of their straight, traditional pass sets, they really want to do these, very, again, traditional kind of these 7-step drop back routes on the outside. This is literally just like a 2-man route downfield, right? You got both your perimeter receivers. This is where I talk about the 12 personnel. A lot of times to give them, Jalen Hurts that, make sure he has that all that time that's to do those 7-step drop type looks where he has all the time in the world back here. They do have the chip and release for the both tight ends. And then, yeah, again, just these very, very traditional routes on the outside, a comeback route, a deep comeback. Devontae Smith gets wide open, easy pitch and catch. It's going to be a lot on the Chiefs corners to deal with being isolated on the outside, because the Eagles do it by scheme. I talked about how, they open up space on the slants for A.J. Brown. You can see Dallas Goedert here. He's just running that middle of the field. It just takes a linebacker with him. It gives A.J. Brown some space to work on the outside and get himself open past the sticks. This is a scramble play. Pressure forces him out, almost a completion anyway. But, it just, again, very another example of it here. But, again, just the corners are going to have to be dealing with isolation on the outside. That's how the Eagles are going to scheme it up. They're going to want to give, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith opportunities, one-on-one with whoever they're going against for deep balls. Here's in the Super Bowl. This is what I was talking about a little bit, where Jalen Hurts is going to push the ball downfield to his guys, guys like A.J. Brown. And again, by scheme, he's isolated on the outside over here. You have the triple threat down here. You have the trips down here, kind of just running deep overs, trying to grab that safety's attention. He probably could have taken the shot down here to A.J. Brown. They're just going to try to do that for a lot of the game. So it's a big deal for the Chiefs to not only get in those 3rd and 10 situations, but be able to get pressure, Caleb, right? And be able to not allow Jalen Hurts to get to these throws.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, because it goes back to their offensive line. They are talented. They are a good pass protecting team. I do think the Chiefs could possibly get a little more pressure on them than they did the last Super Bowl. The last Super Bowl, the Chiefs defensive line didn't really get like a ton of pressure. But, really, like you said, their concepts aren't hard. They do rely on athleticism and talent. And that's, honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't always have to be, Andy Reid out here scheming stuff up just to scheme stuff up. Sometimes you can just take big rips down the field and you can just outrun coverage like they did here, which we'll see if Trent McDuffie's got this player memorized a little bit, because he's probably going to get a chance or two versus Brown in this one. But
yeah,
should be
you hit on it. You hit on it, honestly. It was a really, that's what I probably needed to get to and make it a clear point, was that they have very simple pass concepts off of their run stuff, and obviously it's a different coach from the Super Bowl. I understand that it's not the same play caller, but I think they morphed it around Jalen Hurts, because I think that's what Jalen Hurts type of offense, it is. That's what he wants to run. He wants simple pass concepts. And the reason the simple pass concepts work is because you have to worry so much about the run game. You have to be outnumbered sometimes in the secondary. You have to play, with an extra guy up towards the line of scrimmage and play those one high looks. And yeah, you're going to get these pressure these pressure moments where, they stack 2 receivers to this side. You're going to have corners have to make decisions. This safety is obviously kind of feeling the seam. He doesn't get all the way over, but he's a one high. He's not going to get all the way over. It just puts corners on. It's going to put corners on the outside in stressful moments, because Jalen Hurts wants to go deep. He wants to hit those comebacks. He wants to hit, those traditional plays. But you also get in the red zone, and there's sometimes not much you can do about it. But again, this is a very basic thing. Just Jalen Hurts just 3-step out route, boom, touchdown. Like it's a lot of stress on the corners this week, because they're just going to get one-on-one. Because again, and maybe you can touch on it a little more, but it's just going to be hard to generate pressure against this offensive line, blitzing or not. It's just going to be hard to penetrate through this wall of a Eagles offensive line. Are there any weak points in the pass protection?
I think possibly, depending on what's going on at their center spot, but it is a pretty stout group. I think you do like Jones a little bit versus Becton, though, if you can work that in there. And maybe even, this could be a week where you see Tershawn Wharton generate a few pressures just with some of that quickness. But still, much like with Josh Allen, it's got to be containment. You're talking about
Yeah.
the red zone, though. Defense from like the 50 to the 25 going in is going to be critical because, as we know, when the Eagles get to a certain point in the red zone, that's really where they become the juggernaut at. Just with their
Yeah.
run game, their athletes in the pass game, and then how outstanding of a team they are in short yardage. You've got to really lock in if you want to keep them out from like the 50 to the 25.
No, that is where you're right. That run game with Jalen Hurts as that second option, because he isn't as explosive as maybe even he used to be or whatever. He doesn't look that explosive to me. And he never was super explosive as a runner, but in the red zone, you don't need to be as explosive. You just need to be strong and get to where you need to go if you have that angle. And I think that's where it really shows up. But yeah, I did include a few times where Washington was able to get a little pressure on Jalen. You see Landon Dickerson, get beat by Bobby Wagner here, which that's a blitzing linebacker. That can be tough. But yeah, I think you just have to blitz in situations and force these kind of hurried throws. First of all, on both of these plays here, Jalen needs to get rid of the ball quick to Saquon. Like he can't hold on to it as long as he does on this play. And honestly, what happens here is I think Saquon actually turns and runs downfield. Jalen wants to throw it here. Saquon's not even looking. So he has to hold for a second before Saquon is looking and then throws it. So that's where, a little miscommunication, a little off against the blitz, on those check down plays can lead to, incompletions and stops. Here's another one where the blitz does kind of free rush where it's just hard. That's hard for Jalen, ask for Jalen. But if you're a quarterback and the blitz is coming and where you need to get it to, you think you might want to just go straight to Saquon here, feel like you have to. Because even if this backer doesn't blitz and he's picking up Saquon to the flat, he's not going to have that angle. So really, you need to, if you're Jalen, you want to get this right to Saquon right away. Instead, he kind of just, succumbs to the sack. And again, that's really tough because there was a free rusher right in his face. That's a little miscommunication on the center though, right there. And that's where, a guy like Landon Dickerson, who isn't the full-time center, right? Cam Jurgens is that center, and he should be playing the Super Bowl, but does Dickerson, obviously Dickerson and Shipley, the running back, they kind of both pick up the same guy and allow one guy to go. So that's where the blitz is going to be huge against the Eagles. Not only confuse Jalen Hurts to try to hurry him up, but just try to confuse what could be a banged up offensive line. But lastly here, just Dallas Goedert, someone you definitely have to account for up the seams, in windows into the second level. You see this play up the seam where he's just a smooth mover. He's long, he's big. He gives Jalen Hurts a big throwing window to throw to. Red zone, we just talked about it. Here's a great example of what they might try to do, where all that attention's on A.J. Brown, on Devontae Smith, even on the run game. Boom, well, let's do a post over the middle, try to get him to front that safety and just give him a jump ball. He almost comes up down with this one. He even says it right after here. He's saying it's so close. But, Caleb, you probably remember, he did eat the Chiefs alive a little bit in the Super Bowl. Just tough catch after tough catch, getting into those windows. Jalen Hurts making some great throws on these too, but that's kind of the X factor here. I think, the Chiefs have been susceptible to tight ends all year, and Dallas Goedert's, one of the better tight ends in the NFL, so he could be a huge part of the Eagles kind of, making the difference on offense. If Saquon can be, settled down and the rest of the pass offense could be corralled.
Definitely. That's just another example of them, banking on their athletes to make plays off of not really that complicated of schemes or looks. And Goddard certainly had a good game. We know how the Chiefs have struggled to cover tight ends in the past, so this will be something certainly interesting to see here as they get into it.
He's strong, dude. Like, this catch just cracks me up because Leo does everything right. He rips down the ball through the hands, and Dallas Goedert just casually gets up with the ball, tosses it to the ref. Like, he's a strong dude, so he's going to make strong catches over the middle. Definitely going to be kind of that X factor for them, when you got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith kind of as your, key playmakers, Saquon Barkley, obviously. If the Chiefs can limit the amount of times Dallas Goedert beats them on third down, beats them in the red zone, that's going to be huge, Caleb. So it's a good breakdown of the Eagles offense right there, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, you hit all the key points. You got athletes on the outside. You got the best running back in the NFL, best offensive line in the NFL, playmaker at quarterback. Can be hard to stop, but I'm going to pull up these defensive clips because the Eagles under Vic Fangio did have one of the better defenses in the NFL this season. So we'll get into that.
Yeah, number one against the pass, allowed the fewest pass yards per game in the NFL this year. One of the best just overall total yards per game. The Eagles defense definitely, but what's funny is the Eagles in 2022 were the number one pass defense, in terms of yardage going into the Super Bowl. And Mahomes and company were still able to find success and sustain drives for the most part. Although, you think about that, you had the defensive touchdown, you had Kadarius Toney's punt return. That helped with some of that. But yeah, I mean, do you feel like this Eagles defense is more threatening than last time? Is there any thought to that?
I think it's pretty similar. I think they're a little bit
Yeah.
more stout on the back end, which I think you've got some stuff about that later. But real quick, they've got different guys on the D line, but they do similar things to the last group. Jalen Carter, he's obviously the guy you got to get eyes on. I think at one point this week, people have started crowning him as the best defensive tackle in football. We'll see what Chris Jones has to say about that.
Hey.
Which, I mean, he's very good. He's led the league. I mean, he's leading the playoff field in pressures with 20. He's played an extra game than the Chiefs. I think Chris Jones has like 8, or as Chris Jones has like 12 or something. He's played in one less game because Philly didn't have the bye. But he's just a monster on the inside, man. He lines up a lot over the right guard, and he'll go from the A gap to the B gap a lot of the time. And here you see he does that, and he knocks the center just here back into the pocket, makes Daniels a little bit uncomfortable, and then wide on the outside here, you just get like a nice bendy pass rush. I believe that is Josh Sweat out there, but that's
Actually,
kind of
is that 58? That's Jalix Hunt for
Jalix
draft
Hunt.
nerds. For draft nerds a few years ago. Was that last year?
I believe so. They've got talented guys all over. They got like Milton Williams on the inside also, and Moro Ojimo. So just like guys we've probably talked about the last few draft cycles, they got kind of rotating in off their bench. But yeah, I mean, definitely with their defensive line, I think the level of worry is you got to go Carter, Nolan Smith, and then Josh Sweat. And we'll get into some of those reasons why here with a few of these clips. This is from last game, and I think Washington's offensive line is fine. They got Allegretti and Wiley, a couple former Chiefs who've won a Super Bowl or two here in Kansas City. But here, take a look at the right side. Look at how far Nolan Smith is. He's outside of the slot receiver. This is nuts because look at this. Look how wide he's coming, and he hits the dip perfectly, gets around the left tackle here, and Jaden Daniels trying to come up with something. He wants to make a play, but that speed off the edge is just too great. And you take a look at the attention they're about to pay to Carter that kind of sets it up. I mean, it is kind of like playing against Chris Jones. You have to have that similar mindset. That's how these teams have had to attack it. Here, they've got kind of the slide going. I actually think Jalen Carter kind of muddles into. He probably could have gotten called for a penalty there on old Eck, but just look at the athleticism from Nolan Smith. We were sitting there at the draft here a couple of years ago, and I mean, Nolan Smith, I wouldn't have been mad if they would have been able to get him. I think Philly took him just right before the Chiefs could. Yeah. He's leading the playoff field in sacks with 4. He had kind of like a generic regular season, but he's really turned it on here in the big moments.
The interesting thing about a Nolan Smith and even Josh Sweat too, and I want your opinion, but like, I honestly think Joe Thuney's a pretty decent they're a pretty decent matchup for Joe Thuney, like for Joe Thuney's side. Like, I think, Thuney doesn't want to see those big edge rushers right now. I think that's what's going to maybe muddy the pocket more, but I think he doesn't mind seeing, trying to match speed, trying to match up the arc with guys like Nolan Smith or Josh Sweat or Jalix Hunt.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I was horrified at the prospect of Wiley and Orlando Brown versus Sweat and Hassan Reddick. I'm a little less worried this time because even Jawan Taylor, he plays relatively fine against athletic edge rushers. I also still think the Houston Texans had the best. I mean, I know statistically it says, the Eagles were number 1. I still think the Texans defense, especially up front, is better than what the Eagles have. Outside of like having like Jalen Carter, but they still have nice interior pieces. But again, you get Carter and Smith on the same side of the field, you're just asking for problems. And, actually Wiley does pretty good here in Smith, but the center completely oversets and Carter returns. And you just see how quick he is, how violent he is with his hands, just that quick slap to get around. And he doesn't get the sack, but it completely screws up the entire play and just speeding everything up.
Yeah, I mean, and Milton Williams too. He's feeling the penetration Carter has. He's moving to the front of the pocket, getting in Daniel's way, getting to the path. It's a smart rush team, smart rush group. And yeah, Carter's just the disruptor inside. And it's interesting. I saw that I made this note from my PFF research that Carter does only align on that right side of the ball. He is only aligned over the left guard 3% of his defensive line snaps this year. So it'd be a switch up to get Carter one on one with Caliendo too much. It should be best on best Trey Smith versus Carter a lot.
Which that's kind of what you're wanting to see. Those guys are familiar with each other. They've been playing against each other since 2020, Georgia versus Tennessee. Last season, they were in a dogfight. Here's Milton Williams. He's like kind of like their Tershawn Wharton. It's like their third defensive tackle along the inside. He's just quick, super quick pass rusher, good, solid player. The Eagles have done a tremendous job. He doesn't get the sack there. I think it is Sweat comes down with it, but still that play is created by the interior there. So they've got all kinds of mix-ups and matchups and explosive guys up front there.
So yeah, so with that, you talk about pass protection, you talk about, okay, Carter's on one side, Milton Williams maybe over Caliendo. So does Creed Humphrey a lot of times slide towards Carter with Trey, or does he slide to help Caliendo and leave Trey one-on-one with Carter sometimes? I mean, that's going to be the interesting thing.
It's going to be, I think a lot of it's going to come down to mixing it up.
Yeah.
You can't just get, and I'll tell you one thing I've seen too much this year in the playoffs. There's just so many blown line calls from a lot of teams. I've never seen this many. The Chiefs, if they're getting beat, the Chiefs aren't going to get beat because they're confused. They're going to get beat because they're not talented enough. I mean, Mike Caliendo's in the right spot 100%, 99 to 100% of the time. It's just a physical deficiency. But, here's kind of the elder statesman of that D-line, Josh Sweat, going to work here against the Steelers. Obviously, he's long, he's lanky, he's athletic. I really think that, though, that this is something I think Jawan Taylor and Joe Thuney can handle. I think they're kind of equipped to dealing with this. And we'll see what kind of game plan Fangio wants to throw out. Obviously, he's familiar with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are familiar with him. The Chiefs offense cooked the Dolphins last year. I don't think that, Fangio, those guys, they really struggled. I mean, their defense had some good games against Pat, and then Pat had some games where he just went nuclear against them. So it is kind of interesting to see, which game plan the Broncos will, or not the Broncos, I'm sorry, the Eagles will choose to pull from here. But let me find one more because I think I've got a clip here. I'll show probably one more of Smith and Nolan because of Nolan, Smith, and Carter because that's really just what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No, and I do agree. I think the key is the front of the pocket, the edges of the pocket. I think you can feel confident about Joe Thuney and Jawan Taylor handling. I'm with you on that.
Okay, look at this though. How are you this into the divisional round of the playoffs and I don't know, they just let Jalen Carter go untouched. That's what I'm saying. I've seen this kind of stuff entirely too many times from pretty much every team in the playoffs except for Kansas City and Philly, and it makes sense why those two teams are now in the Super Bowl. It's like this is inexcusable. It's late in the game, you're down, it's a passing down for the Rams, and you just let Jalen Carter just run up the middle. Like, yeah, that's one of his sacks, but shoot, I mean, Mike Pennell can make that play.
Well, but it does speak to, his athleticism where he does jump around on that inside where he's going to try to go over that center, he's going to scrape over, but kind of here, he almost like threatens it. He almost act like he's going all the way over and then he just boom so quick back inside. Like that is why he's special, man. That is hard to deal with no matter who you are at times. So yeah, I think that's the key matchup for the Chiefs offense is just making sure Jalen Carter doesn't blow too many things up.
Right. I mean, his major advantage over everyone else has just been his ability to get back into that A gap and that B gap. I mean, it's so impressive what he's able to do at such a consistent rate with all of that stuff. But I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you now. What are some ways you can mitigate this? Running the football would work, I think. I think that the Eagles, if you remember back to some of the Fangio days, there's some opportunities to run the ball there a few times. Jerick McKinnon and Pacheco have had some decent games versus some of these Vic Fangio defenses in the past. Another way is I think throwing the ball out of the backfield. I think that with the way the
Yeah.
Chiefs receiving core is kind of starting to, there's this mystery around them. Juju and all of a sudden coming out of nowhere, and Hollywood coming out of nowhere, and all of a sudden Xavier Worthy's lead receiver. You can't just leave Travis Kelce alone, or it's gonna be a long day for you. I just think that when you start to add this stuff up, some of these like little check downs to like Pacheco or Hunt could turn into big rips before the blink of an eye, which is what we've seen in the past against this Fangio defense.
Yeah, no, that was something I keep coming back to when I think about this matchup is, and we'll get into it. It's kind of the ways the Eagles play their coverage and some of the things they allow as a defensive pass or a pass defense. I think it does kind of funnel to those underneath passes, those quick passes, which the Chiefs, in these big games down the stretch, they have really, come to be, very good at the quick passes, very good at making the most of, these short passes. But I think even more this game, you could see that running back position be really key in the pass game, whether it's screens, whether it's just, getting to the flat. But, when I talk about how the Eagles play defense, honestly, they kind of remind me of the Bills defense to an extent, where they kind of want to keep things in front of them. They have the talent to an extent to man up at times and feel decent about it, but they do want to be a zone heavy team. They do want to kind of, force you to nickel and dime it, trust their linebackers to kind of cover the middle of the field. And this is where it's key, where Zach Bond, obviously has ascended this year into a really, really good player, but the Eagles lost to Kobe Dean in that wild card round. He's not going to be playing in the Super Bowl. Oren Burks, who was that 49ers third linebacker who actually came in for Dre Greenlaw last year in the Super Bowl, he is now that second linebacker. And so I think the Eagles are a little more susceptible over the middle. And that's where, you saw it in the NFC Championship, actually, at that second level, up the seam over the middle. Zach Ertz, was able to find space, get those, kind of chains moving completions against them, or just kind of, the ability to at least find a window, even if he wasn't thrown to like he isn't here. He undercuts, Burks and does give, a throwing window there. Would have been a little short of the sticks, but still. But no, I think that's where Kelce, there's a chance Kelce has a strong game here. Just kind of manipulating again. You saw it in that first Super Bowl too, where he's just so good. No matter how fast or athletic he is, he's so good at once he's releasing into his routes. He doesn't tell you where he's going. He almost tries to, give you the body language that he's going to go one way. And as soon as he's in your blind spot, boom, he's going another way. The linebacker thought he had it felt out. He thought he had he's sinking the right way. And then all of a sudden Kelce's on the other side of him going for 20 yards. Like you see it right here where, Bond's kind of having to play this high low. But, you have this flat defender here. So you think Bond would have to give the tight end a little more help over the middle, a little more, respect over the middle. And obviously the Eagles pass rush, finishes this one off. But again, I think the over the middle stuff is going to be key. The Eagles do have talent on the outside, right? Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean is their Cooper DeJean, I should say, is their primary slot cornerback. And so the Chiefs will try to, take advantage maybe of some rookies at the cornerback spot with some, trickery, some misdirection. But when it comes to just straight dropbacks, again, here's Oren Burks as that linebacker, and Ertz just easily gets that separation, not necessarily separation, but just, wins the hand fight, gets to the sideline, obviously drops it here. This is a play you showed too. But, again, I just think Zach Ertz, obviously a really, talented tight end, but he moves just as much as Travis Kelce in terms of, the old man, kind of wiggle, and he was able to find space against this Eagles defense. I think Kelce is set for a big game, but also Juju. We saw it this last game where Juju's that big presence over the middle, catch, passes over the middle. Here we're going to see the Rams from the divisional round create a throwing window over the middle. You're going to see the motion. Puka Nacua gets into that window where Oren Burks, watch, he has to respect this run a little bit. He respects Kyron Williams, but he just doesn't have that feel where, that safety came all the way down. So maybe it's really the safety that, Chauncey, it's really on Chauncey on this one, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But all that to say is, you can find these pass over the middle, Demarcus Robinson with a great catch here. But that's where the Chiefs are going to have to attack with the running backs to the flat, underneath stuff. But when they want to get to the second level, when they want to get those chunk completions, they're going to have to attack these linebackers to do it. I think that's going to be the easiest way. Just here, kind of a simple motion gets Cooper Kupp from out of the backfield. Oren Burks just has no awareness really of like, okay, he's probably going to run an out route. There's no one over there. He probably should get over there a little quicker. Those are the kind of, small edges the Chiefs are going to be able to get in their pass game, playing a team that is down to Kobe Dean, very talented linebacker that could really take up a lot of space over the middle of the field. I think the Chiefs, again, Zach Bond's a talented player, but Zach Bond is really, I think he makes his plays coming to the line of scrimmage, being kind of that versatile, dynamic where he can kind of pass rush too a little bit. He can bat down passes. I think if the Chiefs can get him into coverage mismatches, I think that's going to be an advantage for them. And the Chiefs could take advantage of that quite a bit. And Oren Burks, again, a guy that was the third linebacker for the Niners last year, and the Chiefs really carved up with Kelce.
I have a feeling Bond is going to be doing like a lot of spine around Mahomes. I have a feeling that's kind of where he excels at. So we might see some of that, but downside is you're going to have your backup linebacker running around, and you're going to have the Chiefs running every array of crossers that you can come up with.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the Eagles are very straightforward with how they attack on pass downs. If they are going to spy, it's probably just going to be a pretty simple thing. They don't do a lot of, creative blitzing. They actually don't blitz really at all. They have one of the lower blitz rates in the NFL. That's a Vic Fangio staple, right? He's not going to blitz. He's going to, drop his 7 and see what you can do against it. But I think Mahomes has mastered that a little bit, kind of, you almost need to mix it up against him. If it's too straightforward, we've seen that spell trouble for teams like the Bills that play a little too straightforward of a defense sometimes in the past. Other teams,
they're like similar to their offense too. It's like they run very basic concepts on defense. It's just they have supremely talented players at every spot.
No, that's actually, it's, and, to kind of wrap up the show, it's kind of an all-encompassing point of this whole matchup is that I think the Chiefs, they can be so different. They can be, one guy can be the main player one game, one guy, there's never one main player, defense or offense. And when you look at the Eagles, it does kind of seem like, if they're going to win, it's because Saquon has a big game. It's because A.J. Brown makes big plays. It's because Jalen Carter has a big game. Like, you already kind of can see what you need. It's pretty straightforward, looking at the Eagles. It's not straightforward in how to defend the Chiefs or attack the Chiefs. I think that's pretty – would you agree with that the Chiefs make it they're not – I think in the regular season sometimes they can be a little predictable, but I think we've seen playoff mode – they're unpredictable. They keep people on their toes.
And I don't think anyone in the NFL world, would have seen Xavier Worthy's breakout coming at this point in the season. But it's just that added element now that's just messing with people. By the way, you have no idea what you're getting ready to see from DeAndre Hopkins or Hollywood. You haven't really seen much out of them. So there is that. Juju Smith-Schuster's 2 catches last week were giant. They were big rips down the field. No one was ready for that. And it makes sense because Juju's always been a favorite target of Mahomes. He's been a guy that Andy has always trusted in big spots, and he came out in the big game and performed. It's just stuff like that. Who would have thought they were going to throw the ball to Samaje Perine to ice the trip to the game? Like, maybe film guys like us or people that have been studying that stuff closely, but you're not thinking about that when you see Travis Kelce out there. You're thinking we got to stop Kelce. And gosh, what if this was the week where the Eagles say, you know what, we're just going to leave Zach Bond one-on-one versus Kelce the entire game and just see what he can do.
No, that's really interesting. No, I know. I agree. It's really interesting because, I think you saw against Buffalo kind of maybe pointed a little bit too much to Kelce, and that allowed guys like Juju, some of the other stuff that came open to happen in the quick passing stuff because maybe there were primary attentions on Kelce. Do the Eagles copy that? Or, do they say, you know what, we're not going to fall for that. We trust our guys against Kelce. What's Kelce going to do a one-on-one? He's old, blah, blah, blah. Set up Kelce to go AFC Championship last year on their behind where, he's 11 for 11 for 100 yards or whatever. That's really his key. But I think if they do point a lot of attention towards Kelce, you could see Noah Gray, Juju, DeAndre Hopkins, even guys kind of take advantage of that, against the zone, on the backside of the play. So definitely important, definitely a key thing here, how they handle Kelce.
Let me ask you something. The Eagles have been blowing teams out to get here. They have not really played a close game. They scrapped around with Green Bay. They came out probably a rusty. The Packers were banged up, though. I mean, the Packers defense is decent enough, but the Packers offense, just with those injuries they sustained, it wasn't great. They come out, the Rams play them close, and then it's the classic LA implosion once the weather starts. And then, this week, I think the Washington Commanders are just a year too early. I've seen like stuff from Eagles fans and even like Eagles media members saying they think they're going to win this game comfortably. I don't know if it's going to be like that. I will say, though, as always tends to be, the Chiefs are in total playoff mode right now because they were in a dogfight versus the Texans to the very end, and they just had another classic one with Buffalo a couple weeks ago. Who do you think has the advantage? The team that's been blowing people out coming in, or the team that's been locked in, knowing how small the margin of error is getting to this point?
No, it's a really good point because, yeah, the Eagles, not only have they been kind of front running in these games or winning these games comfortably, a lot of times this season they haven't got off to strong starts, and they've still been able to maybe get that lead and sustain that lead. Maybe their defense kind of holds it down at first. If they get into a hole, if the Chiefs can somehow find a way to do what they did last week, where they come out firing their opening drive 7-0, find a way to get to that 2-score lead. Yeah, the Eagles haven't been in that position, where too many times where they're down 2 scores and having to navigate that. That would be interesting. Because and another part of that too, Caleb, is like we've only seen this Chiefs team get dominated one time in a playoff game, and it was those circumstances are not the same this time in terms of having a shoddy offensive line. I know Caliendo's in there, but I do feel good about how this offensive line can hold up them. And I think the Eagles pass rush is a good one, but I think the Chiefs can handle this game. I think if anyone can win this comfortably, it's the Chiefs over the Eagles.
We'll see. I mean, it's a Super Bowl. It's never going to be comfortable. All these games are always going to come right down to it. My thing, though, is if the Chiefs come out and they can put the pedal down, it'll be interesting to see how Philly reacts because you're not, this isn't the Packers or anything. This isn't the Rams. I mean, this is the Chiefs, I know a lot of things I've seen, the Philadelphia people are like, well, they haven't seen running backs like ours, or, you haven't seen receivers like ours. Yeah, we have to play against the gauntlet of quarterbacks every season, though. So we have that experience, and the Chiefs' defense is primarily designed to try to stop Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson because it typically comes down to us playing one of those two teams. So you have those different elements where I think if they want to shore up against the run, they can. But if the Eagles want to get pass happy, let's say the Chiefs get up a couple scores and the Eagles want to go out and get pass happy, then I honestly think that plays into Casey's favor if you could take away the run game a little bit. So I'll be curious to see how the Chiefs want to start this one out.
Yeah, no, I think starting the start to the game is super, super important. The Eagles got a pretty decent lead against the Chiefs in the last Super Bowl. Nick Bolton's fumble recovery for a touchdown really saved the Chiefs from being in a pretty big hole in that first half. I think if the Chiefs can flip the script and get out to their own big lead, I think it's going to be much harder for the Eagles to do what they want to do. Like you mentioned, they've dictated a lot of their games. They've controlled a lot of their games by just, playing a positive game script. Get them in a negative game script. Make Jalen Hurts do what he did last game, because that last Super Bowl was one of the best quarterback performances in a losing effort. And, if he can do that again, then, maybe he deserves to get one of these rings. But, yeah, you force him to do that again, and I think you take that over, allowing Saquon to run all over you,
Yep. Hey, real quick as we're wrapping up here, who do you think who are your, like, 3 most underrated Chiefs getting ready to head into this one?
Well, you talk about underrated. The first one that comes to mind is, we've seen special teams plays against these Eagles in a Super Bowl. Nico Remigio, can he pull that Kadarius Toney off? He's had 2 big returns this postseason. Can he find, another key one? So I'd say him as the number one. You got anybody that comes to mind?
Probably Mike Pennell.
Yes. Oh, man. This is a Mike Pennell game, especially with the Eagles' interior offensive line, experiencing some injuries for sure.
There's something about Mike Pennell. When he just gets in the zone, he is not movable. Like this past week against the Bills was wild, watching him hold the line. And then even last year, the Super Bowl, like him throwing down Trent Williams at the line of scrimmage. It's like when he gets going, he is not going to be stopped. And if the Eagles want to try to avoid like running towards Chris Jones' direction or anything like that, having Pinnell in there could make all the difference in the world just for shoring stuff up. So I'll be curious to see what that guy can do.
Well, yeah, freeing stuff up, just, not getting placed to the second level, allowing linebackers to have space to work, when it is a Saquon zone run, they're having to navigate that box. Like, yeah, he plays a huge role in allowing the linebackers to shoot and, not get caught up. Definitely. Another one comes to mind, Noah Gray. I mean, he's had some big games this year. You think about the Chiefs, if they do come out and run the ball, maybe, or have a dedicated run game that could come with maybe some more 12 personnel, trying to take advantage of maybe the Eagles, having their linebacker down, maybe trying to, force them to either put more linebackers on the field, their fourth string linebacker, or, play against the run on a light nickel personnel. So Noah Gray could be on the field quite a bit, and he could be someone that, maybe catches a touchdown, maybe is, moves the chains a few times that, in some key moments, I could see that.
I'll stick with offense. I'll go back to P. Ryan. I mean, there's going to be some big
Yeah.
downs in there where he's going to have to hold up and pass protection, help out a little bit here and there. I don't know, man. There's something about him. The Chiefs just trust him in these big down situations. So I think that probably speaks to what kind of a dude he is in there, obviously fighting for a Super Bowl title here.
No doubt about it. Yeah. No, I think P. Ryan, when you talk about the screen game, maybe you talk about, just again, yeah, like the Eagles are going to funnel things underneath. And, if the Chiefs aren't pass downs, if Jalen Carter is getting through, like he's going to be getting rid of that ball quick. Make Zach Bond, make Oren Burks tackle P. Ryan in space. Like P. Ryan, he's hard to tackle in space when you get him going. So I think that's a good one. Let me throw out one other one I'm thinking of from the defense. And when you think about the safety position, you think about like Brian Cook, how he has been, iffy. Like, let's see if Jaden Hicks, can really be that rangy guy, someone on the back end that, yeah, if they're going to go deep, if they're going to test downfield, like you need someone that's going to cover the back end. And it feels like Hicks has the better range right now. So I think if they trust Hicks a little more as that true free safety, it might pay dividends.
That's a great pick. I mean, this game really does fit this play style Hicks has, I think, to a T, really, with kind of what Philly is going to want to come in here and do. Why not just stick with the underrated train? I'll go with Justin Watson. Like he's gonna have a play. Like there will be one play he makes this game that's just something critical is going to happen, and he's going to make the right decision at the right time, and it's going to lead to something good. Last week he had a giant block on the punt return for Remigio, and then he ran a good enough route to get the 2-point conversion. So, it's not going to be all the time, but now that you have all these eyes on everyone else, we'll see if they still forget about old Watson out there.
No, I think that is a good pick because he could be an underrated impact in terms of like not even getting the ball, but helping people get open. Because you talk about Worthy is going to obviously he has such a feature role in this offense now. Brown is going to be a featured part of the offense. Watson can really just be that zone stretcher that I'm going to go deep. I'm going to push these safeties deep. Open up the middle of the field. Kind of just be that decoy a lot of the time against a defense that really is going to try to be, very strong about not letting things get over the top. What you got to do then is just really push them, right? And Watson's going to be that guy really pushing those safeties deep, really trying to stretch out the windows and allow Kelsey, Gray, Juju, whoever over the middle of the field to find space. And so, yeah, Watson's a good pick for sure. And it just speaks to the point that the Chiefs have so many – little details they can throw at you. So many players that, have key roles in this game. Just a complete team. It's not just Mahomes, obviously. No one thinks that in Chiefs Kingdom. But, this team's ready to be, the greatest team of all time and cement that Sunday. I think this team's ready to make history, Caleb.
Yep. Can't wait.
Let's do it. Super Bowl Sunday, down in New Orleans, down in the French Quarter. We got a big time game Sunday night. Make sure everyone is, getting your Super Bowl appetizers ready, your spread ready, whatever you're doing. If you're heading down to New Orleans, like some of us here, not me, we'll see. We'll see how they do down there. Good luck to everyone doing that.
Y'all might see something a little later in the week from me on the socials.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a tease. That is a tease. That's what they call it in the business. Appreciate everyone joining us tonight. Appreciate all of Chiefs Kingdom watching this breakdown, these film breakdowns. We just love thinking about the in-depth part of football. And, this matchup has so many good details, so many little storylines when you talk about the on-field matchups. We couldn't even hit on them all, through an hour-long show. So appreciate everyone joining. Watch your Chiefs try to get to that 3-peat on Sunday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be, giving you, instant analysis and things leading up to the game. We still got a long week until that Sunday, Caleb. So any final thoughts to Chiefs Kingdom before we get out of here?
Nope. It's time to go make history, though. I got a 31-24 KC.
Oh man, I haven't even done the score prediction yet. I like that one. I like a 30-point performance. I do think the Chiefs offense is going to continue to stay locked in and get the job done themselves, carry the team. Let's do it, Chiefs Kingdom. All right, thank you for joining us. We will be back next week, hopefully breaking down a Super Bowl victory and looking at how the Chiefs made history against the Eagles. We look forward to seeing you then. Until then, go Chiefs. Have a good night.